Okay, let's unpack this idea.
Mm.
Imagine you need something complex delivered just right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's, I don't know, a critical piece of software your business totally relies on.
Yeah, something you can't afford to mess up.
Exactly. Or think about catering for a huge event like a wedding or something, massive undertaking.
Right.
Or even, getting a whole new office building constructed. You've got this end result in mind, the thing.
The deliverable.
The deliverable, right. And it absolutely has to meet your goals, whatever those goals are.
And what's interesting, I think, is that your focus isn't just on that final thing, is it? You're also thinking, well, how's it going to get done? How does it get to me?
Yeah.
Like you said, the package needs a mail carrier, the pizza needs a delivery driver. And when we talk about projects, especially big ones like construction, the how, well, that's what we call the delivery method.
The delivery method.
It's just as vital as the what. It's the whole system, the way you organize everything to make sure that finished building or that software actually does what the client, needs it to do.
That makes perfect sense. And look, to make this super clear, let's use that Thanksgiving dinner example. The deliverable is easy. A great meal, everyone happy.
Can't beat a good Thanksgiving dinner.
Right. But how do you make it happen?
Yeah.
Method one, you could, go full chef mode, cook every single thing yourself.
Total control, maximum effort. Probably.
That's one delivery method, total control, like you said. Or maybe it's more of a team thing, a potluck. Everyone brings a dish.
Ah, the potluck method. Different vibe entirely. Different management needed to. Who brings what?
Totally different. Or you could just ditch the kitchen chaos altogether. Eat out. Restaurant.
Yet another method. Minimal effort for you, maybe, but probably costs more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And see, each of those Thanksgiving approaches, they have different results, different consequences.
For sure. Cooking solo means all the time, and energy is on you, but you control the quality. Potluck spreads the load, but, well, who knows what Uncle Buck's casserole is really like.
Yeah, variability and eating out. Super convenient, but hits the wallet harder, perhaps.
Precisely. And that ties directly back to construction. Right at the very start, the owner, the client, has to make some really big calls.
Okay.
Decisions about how the whole project's going to be managed, how to best fit their situation, their goals.
And the source we looked at brings up some key questions the owner has to ask.
Yes, crucial questions like, how do we protect the budget, keep things on schedule, time and money?
Big ones.
Then, how is the team actually put together, the structure, who reports to whom, and timing?
Right.
When do we actually bring in the designers? When do the builders get involved? Early, late.
And what about the owner themselves? What's their role going to be? Hands-on, hands-off, somewhere in between?
And the answers to those questions. Well, just like deciding between cooking solo or ordering Thanksgiving dinner, those answers determine the construction delivery method.
Got it. So that choice dictates everything that follows.
Pretty much. It sets up the contracts, who's responsible for what, the risk allocation, even how fast the project can potentially move.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive seems clear then. We're going to explore these main ways construction projects get organized, these delivery methods, and really pull out the key things, the pros, the cons for you, the listener, so you can get the essentials without getting totally lost in the weeds.
And our source, Chapter 6 on project delivery, it lays out the main ones we'll be digging into. It actually identifies 3 fundamental methods, kind of the basis for most others.
3 main ones.
Yeah. You've got design, bid, build, then design, build, and finally, construction management.
Okay. Design, bid, build. Let's start there. The source says it's the most common, the sort of traditional way.
That's right. Traditional is a good word for it. And the name itself tells you the sequence pretty clearly. Design, bid, build.
Step 1, step 2, step 3.
Exactly. First, the owner hires a designer, usually an architect. They create the entire design, all the detailed plans, the specifications, everything.
Okay, design complete. Check.
Then, once that's all done and dusted, the project goes out for bids. You invite contractors to price the job based on those finished plans.
The competitive bidding.
Usually, yes. Multiple contractors submit their prices, and typically the contract goes to the one who comes in with the lowest qualified bid.
Lowest price wins, generally speaking.
Generally. Then, finally, that chosen contractor takes those plans and, well, builds the project. Builds things.
So very linear, sequential. The builder doesn't really get involved until the design is totally locked down.
Correct. They see the finished plans for the first time when they're putting their bid together. The whole idea is if the design is complete and clear, Any competent contractor should be able to build it.
Right. Makes sense.
And this traditional method, DBB, it definitely has its advantages, that competitive bidding. It often drives the initial construction cost down, gives the owner the lowest starting price point, on paper at least.
Okay. Lowest initial cost. That's a plus.
And because the cost is pretty well defined before a shovel hits the ground, the owner's direct financial risk during construction is somewhat limited.
Ah, less uncertainty during the build itself.
Comparatively, yes. In fact, a lot of public projects, government work, they're often legally required to use design bid build because of that open competition aspect.
Interesting. Okay. But there have to be downsides too, right? The source mentions some.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One big one is that because the contractor only comes in after the design is done,
Right.
you miss out on their practical, hands-on construction knowledge during the design phase, and that's often the easiest and cheapest time to make changes or find potential savings.
Yeah, getting that builder's eye on the plans early could catch things, maybe suggest smarter ways to build something before it's all finalized.
Precisely. You lose that opportunity for early collaboration on constructability.
Hmm. And what about the relationship dynamics? The source mentioned something about the architect's role.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Typically in DBB, the architect kind of acts as the middleman. They administer the contract between the owner and the contractor.
So they oversee the builder's work. Check if it matches the design, approve payments.
Exactly. And that setup, well, it can sometimes create friction, even an adversarial relationship between the architect who designed it and the contractor who's building it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Designer wants it exactly per plan. Builder might see issues or want to do things differently.
And that tension isn't always great for the project overall.
Okay, and timeline.
Mm.
How does DBB stack up on speed? It sounds potentially slow.
It often is the slowest method, relatively speaking. You have the whole design phase, which can take a while. Then you have the bidding period. Then construction starts. It's all sequential.
No overlap.
No overlap. And if something goes wrong, say the bids come in way over budget or a flaw is found in the design during bidding, you might have to go back, redesign, rebid, adding more delays.
Okay.
So yeah, the source is pretty clear. If speed is your absolute top priority, DBB is probably not your best bet. You'd likely want to look at other options.
Gotcha. And what about complexity? If the project isn't straightforward, like a tricky renovation?
That's another potential pitfall. If the initial design documents aren't super detailed, or if you run into unexpected conditions hidden in the walls of an old building.
And surprises.
Surprises. There's a higher chance of change orders. The contractor can argue, sometimes legitimately, that the original plans didn't cover this, so it's extra cost, extra time.
Okay. So design, bid, build. Familiar, often lowest initial bid price,
Right.
but slower, less collaboration early on, potential for change orders if things aren't perfectly defined.
That's a good summary.
Now, the source also mentioned a variation. Design, negotiate, build, DNB. How's that different?
Right, DNB. It's similar to DBB in that the owner still has separate contracts with the designer and the builder.
Okay, still two main contracts.
And the architect often still administers the construction contract. The key difference is how the contractor is selected.
Not just lowest bid.
Not necessarily. Instead of a wide-open bid, the owner might negotiate a price directly, but usually with a select group of pre-qualified contractors. Maybe just one or two they trust.
Ah, so more selective. Negotiation involved?
Exactly. And this usually happens after the design is mostly complete, maybe not 100% finalized, so the contractor gets involved a little bit earlier than in pure DBB.
Okay, so they might offer some input before it's totally set in stone.
Potentially, yes. They might offer some constructability feedback. And sometimes, because you skip the formal, lengthy bidding period, it can shave a bit of time off the overall schedule. Less chance of needing a major redesign after bids come in too high.
Makes sense, but still fundamentally separate design and build contracts.
Still fundamentally separate, and the source notes it's less common for public projects, again because of rules favoring open bidding.
Got it. Okay, so let's move to design build. The source says this one's gaining popularity. What's the core idea here? What's the big shift?
The really fundamental shift with design build, or DB, is the contract structure. The owner has just one contract.
One contract.
For everything.
For both design and construction. You hire a single entity.
Wow, okay. So you're not hiring an architect separately and then later bidding it out to contractors.
Nope. You hire one integrated team. Could be a firm that has both designers and builders in-house, or maybe a joint venture, a partnership created for the project. But from the owner's perspective, It's one point of responsibility.
So the architect and the contractor are literally on the same team from the start, working together under that single contract with the owner.
Exactly.
That sounds like it could dramatically change the dynamic, less potential for, finger pointing between the designer and builder if something goes wrong.
Absolutely. That's a major selling point. The source really emphasizes this. Because they're one entity, the incentive is to collaborate, not conflict. Communication is usually much smoother.
Yeah, problems get solved internally by the team, not argued about between separate companies. Right. It streamlines communication and makes handling changes during the project potentially much more efficient.
So how does an owner pick a design-build team? Is it still about the lowest price?
Not usually, no. It's often more complex. Several design-build teams might submit proposals and negotiate with the owner.
Proposals covering what?
Things like their team's qualifications, their experience on similar projects, their proposed schedule, their management approach, and yes, cost, but often things like their overhead, profit margins, maybe a target cost, rather than just a hard bid number at the very beginning.
So it's more of a best value selection, considering multiple factors.
Exactly. And interestingly, with design build, you don't always have a completely fixed, guaranteed final price right at the absolute start. It might evolve as the design gets fleshed out.
Okay. Now, one huge advantage mentioned for design build is this idea of fast tracking. What exactly is that?
Right. Fast tracking, this is a big one. It's where you overlap design and construction significantly.
Overlap. How does that work?
Well, think about it. Because the design and construction teams are integrated, the builders can start working on early parts of the project, say digging foundations, putting up the basic structure, before the architect has finalized every last detail of maybe the interior finishes or the landscaping.
So construction starts while design is still ongoing for later phases.
Precisely. That overlap can dramatically shorten the overall project timeline compared to the strict sequence of design bid build.
Less waiting around, get things moving faster.
Potentially saving time, which often means saving money too. Earlier completion can be very valuable.
That definitely sounds appealing, especially if you're on a tight schedule. But it also feels like there could be risks. Building something when the plans aren't 100% finished.
You've hit the nail on the head. Fast tracking is a major advantage of DB, but the source is clear. It generally increases the owner's risk, at least initially.
How so?
Because the final cost isn't locked in from day one. You're committing to construction, spending money based on a design that's still evolving. If significant design changes happen later, it could impact costs you've already incurred.
Okay, so more cost uncertainty upfront compared to DBB?
Typically, yes. DBB follows that sequential path design, then bid, then build. Design build allows for fast tracking, this overlapping approach, but it comes with that trade-off in early cost certainty.
So design build? Potential for much faster delivery, better team collaboration, single point of responsibility, but maybe less cost certainty at the very start. And perhaps the owner needs to be comfortable letting the integrated team manage more of the details.
That's a very good way to put it. The source also flags that with one entity responsible for both design and build quality, you have fewer independent checks and balances compared to having separate contracts.
The architect isn't independently overseeing the builder on the owner's behalf in the same way.
Correct. Now, good DB firms have strong internal controls, but it's structurally different. And yeah, an owner who really wants to be deep in the weeds on every design detail might feel they have less direct control than in DBB.
So who is design build best for?
It tends to shine on complex, maybe technically demanding projects where that close design-construction link is vital, projects with really aggressive schedules, or for owners who prefer to delegate more of the process management to one trusted entity.
Okay, that makes sense. Right, let's tackle the third main method, construction management, or CM. The source mentioned this term can be a bit confusing sometimes.
It really can, yeah, because people use construction management just as a general term for, managing construction on any project.
Just the activity itself.
Exactly. But when we talk about CM as a specific delivery method, it means something particular. It involves bringing in a professional CM firm, a specialist company, very early on.
Early, like during the design phase.
Yes, typically during design, they act as an advisor, a consultant, an expert representative for the owner throughout the whole process. They're like an extension of the owner's own team, bringing construction expertise right from the start.
Okay, an expert advisor. And the source splits CM into two main types, agency CM and at-risk CM.
That's the crucial distinction, yes.
What's the difference?
It boils down to whether the CM company actually does the building work itself, and crucially, whether they take on financial risk for the construction cost.
Okay. Tell me about agency CM first.
Right, agency CM. In this model, the CM firm acts purely as the owner's agent or advisor, a consultant.
They don't actually build anything themselves.
Nope. They manage the process, oversee the work, coordinate things. Often there's still a separate general contractor, maybe even multiple prime contractors hired directly by the owner who do the actual building. The agency CM manages them on the owner's behalf.
So the agency CM doesn't hold the construction contracts.
Correct. And critically, they are not financially on the hook if the construction costs go over what was budgeted or contracted with those builders. The risk stays with the owner.
So under agency CM, the owner is juggling contracts with the architect, the agency CM firm for advice, and the actual builder.
Pretty much, yes. 3 key players contracted separately to the owner. The agency CM is their advocate, managing the builder.
What's the upside of that?
You get that expert construction advice and management oversight right from the beginning during design, which is valuable. You can still potentially use competitive bidding for the actual construction contracts to try and get good pricing. And the owner retains a lot of control. Plus, agency CM can also facilitate fast-tracking, overlapping design and construction.
But the downside sounds like the owner needs to be pretty involved.
Very involved. The source suggests it requires a sophisticated owner, maybe with some in-house project management capability, to really manage those multiple contracts and make sure everyone's coordinated effectively. It demands active owner participation.
Okay, so that's agency CM. What about at-risk CM? How does that change things?
At-risk CM, or CMAR, starts similarly. You bring the CM firm in early during design as a consultant providing pre-construction services, advice on cost, schedule, constructability.
Okay, same early involvement.
But here's the key difference.
Right.
When construction starts, the at-risk CM essentially becomes the general contractor.
Ah, they take on the builder role.
Yes. And crucially, they provide the owner with a guaranteed maximum price, a GMP.
A GMP, so a cost ceiling.
Exactly. They commit to delivering the project for no more than that agreed-upon maximum price. They take on the financial risk if costs go over that GMP, protecting the owner from overruns beyond that point.
So they are at risk financially if costs escalate unexpectedly.
Precisely why it's called at-risk CM. In this model, the owner typically has just 2 main contracts. One with the architect for design, and one with the at-risk CM firm, covering both pre-construction advice and the actual construction delivery up to the GMP.
Okay, so at-risk CM still gives you that early builder input during design. But it also gives the owner more cost certainty for the construction phase itself, compared to agency CM, where the owner holds the risk on the build contracts.
That's the core trade-off, perfectly summarized. The at-risk CM manages the subs, runs the job site, and is responsible for delivering within that GMP, shielding the owner from cost overruns above that agreed cap.
Interesting. So 3 main methods: BBB, DB, and CM in its 2 flavors. But the source also mentioned a couple of others briefly: integrated project delivery and public-private partnerships.
Yeah, IPD and PPPs. They're worth touching on, though maybe less common across the board than the big 3.
What's the gist of IPD, integrated project delivery?
IPD is, well, it's even more integrated than design build in a way. It's really about changing the fundamental structure and incentives. It typically uses a single multi-party contract.
Multi-party, meaning?
Meaning the owner, the main designer, the main constructor, and often key subcontractors all sign the same contract together.
Wow, everyone in one boat contractually from day one.
Exactly. The core idea is intense collaboration right from the absolute beginning. Shared risk, shared reward. Everyone wins together if the project goes well, I'd enter under budget, ahead of schedule, and everyone potentially shares the pain if it doesn't.
Sounds highly collaborative, maybe complex to set up.
It can be, yeah. It requires a big cultural shift, a lot of trust, and sophisticated tools, often building information modeling, or BIM.
BIM, like a detailed 3D digital model everyone works on.
Kind of, yeah. A shared digital representation of the project. IPD aims to maximize efficiency, cut waste, spur innovation by aligning everyone's interests. But that shared risk-reward setup isn't for every owner or every team. It's still relatively new compared to the others.
Okay. And PPPs? Public-private partnerships.
PPPs are generally for really big public infrastructure jobs. Think highways, bridges, hospitals, transit systems.
Major public works.
Right. Here, a private company, or maybe a group of companies, partners with a government agency. The private entity will finance, design, build, and often operate and maintain the facility for a long time, maybe 20, 30 years or more.
So the private sector funds and builds it, then runs it.
Often, yes. They take on a lot of the upfront financial and construction risk. The public agency pays them over the long term, maybe through tolls or availability payments.
Why do this?
It lets the government leverage private funding and expertise, potentially get infrastructure built sooner, and can incentivize quality since the private partner might be maintaining it long term. But
there's always a but.
These deals are incredibly complex, lots of legal and financial structuring needed, and careful oversight to make sure the public interest is protected over that very long contract period.
Okay, wow. So we've really covered a spectrum here, from the traditional design bid build all the way to these highly integrated or long-term partnership models like IPD and PPPs.
Definitely.
And it seems abundantly clear that choosing how you organize the project, picking that delivery method, is just a massive fundamental decision for any owner right at the start.
Absolutely critical. It ripples through everything. The schedule, the final cost, how well the team works together, who holds which risks. It all flows from that initial choice.
Yeah, going back to that Thanksgiving dinner idea one last time, it really hammers home that there's no single best way. Cooking yourself, potluck, eating out strong, it depends entirely on your priorities, your budget, the experience you want.
Couldn't agree more. And the exact same logic applies here in construction. The best delivery method is the one that best fits the specific project and the owner's specific needs and priorities.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Yeah.
Thinking about everything we've discussed, the different levels of owner control, the different ways risk is handled, the potential for speed, which of these approaches feels like it resonates most with you? If you're tackling a major project, which method sounds like it would fit your style best? And maybe more importantly, why?
That's a great question. Thinking about your own comfort level with involvement, with risk, with collaboration, which structure just feels like a more natural fit for how you'd want to operate? It's worth pondering.